Welcome everyone for our live broadcast today. I'm very excited for this session with our technical writer Rebecca Lawrence. Welcome, Rebecca. How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
It's great to have you here on our live stream. And what I wanted is just to give the audience a little bit background about yourself. So tell us a bit about yourself, your background, and where are you based?
Okay, I'm based in Scotland on the east coast between Dundee and Aberdeen. Lovely, bit of bad weather recently, but we're used to that. um, I have been in the world of technical communications since 1989, so I have some experience under my belt. I started my very first job was at IBM working on the original online help for OS2, if anyone remembers that. I have worked in many industries, from finance and banking through special effects software for films, to obviously real-time data. Tools I've used have been many and varied, from the standard of Word in the early day. Well, started with SGML, then we moved to Word. That move was interesting because when using SGML in our plain text editor with no word wrap, we longed for a WYSIWYG editor. And then we met Word, and we longed for a plain text editor. I've worked through various other tools, FrameMaker, Madcat, Flare, and now we're around where I am now is using ASCII doc and GitHub to store and version control all the files.
Yeah, it's a nice journey. Can you tell us why it is important to have a good documentation for any software?
Yes, documentation is a part of the product. It is there to support the users in achieving their goals. It needs to be invisible in many ways. We all know that people don't go to the documentation first, and my lifetime dream of having a leather-bound copy requested is not going to happen, but don't avoid them. The docs can help you. We sit between the people who are up to their necks in building the software, and we make what they're doing available and easy to use for anyone who's coming in. No matter what your background, you should be able to find the level of information that you need, whether it's concepts and just a general idea, or getting down and dirty in code or configuration. You should get to the documentation, see clearly where the information you need is, read and apply it. It should be that straightforward.
Yeah, I totally agree. I found it surprising from all the talks I give, basically how developers approach documentations. Usually they go to search engines and try to find
Yes.
answers on Slack Overflow and basically all other communication channels, Reddit and so on. And when I ask, have you tried to check on documentation? The answer is no. And that's exactly what we wanted. We wanted everyone basically to start from documentation because documentation is not only about the API, so
Exactly.
source code, but also how to use the software. So that's what we wanted to cover, and it is very important, especially like with like various versions. So sometimes if you
Mm.
upgrade version, you really need to check the documentation, see what are the recent changes, and basically how you can, see how you can update your code. So tell us like a little bit about day-to-day activities or weekly activities you are currently working on, and basically how is that fed into our documentation.
Well, I've been with Hazelcast now for a few months. I've found my feet. My day-to-day is attending the stand-ups so that I know what the team's doing. We have a Jira board, which has all of the work that we need to do. So I pick up a ticket, I work on the ticket, produce the documentation. Obviously, this may involve conversations with the development team, with QA, even with marketing, just to get everyone's perspective, make sure everyone's on the same page. We're all using the same language for the same thing. I will prepare a draft. I will share that with another author for a peer review to make sure that the style guide's being met, the content is clear, and to technical representatives so they can check the correctness of the information. Once everything has gone through the approval cycles, it's a case of merging the PR. Obviously, we control everything through GitHub, so I'll pull down the latest copy, update the file locally, test it locally in my local setup. Once it's ready, upload it and raise the PR to request the reviews. Once it's merged, the system automatically does a build and the documentation is refreshed with the updated information.
Yeah, so that's great to hear. So, and I think the takeaway message here is basically check documentations on a frequent basis. Don't assume
Yes.
basically that you know what is on documentation, because sometimes, we get like bugs we need to fix, or, updates, and we update the documentation. So make sure to check it on regular basis. So
Yes.
if I'm new to Hazelcast and I would like to know more about our documentation, can you walk us through our documentation? Where can I find it? What type of like a material I should look at first? And essentially take us through this journey.
Yes, certainly. The documentation, it is linked from the Hazelcast website in the footer. You can find it from your favorite internet search, or you can go to docs.hazelcast.com and that will take you to the homepage. From the homepage of the documentation, you can search through all of the documentation for all of the products, and you can access sections for the platform, for Viridian Cloud, client libraries, the management center. There's tutorials there and other resources. That's the one way into the docs. If you have a certain thing and you search on it within that website, it should take you to the topic that you need. And I would say that if at any time you're in the documentation and you don't understand something, something is wrong, something is not working for you, let us know. Every page has a raise an issue link on it. Raise an issue against us and we will sort it out as soon as we possibly can. We will prioritize obviously anything that is incorrect, but if you don't understand it, that is as bad as being incorrect, really. So that is important. If you spot 2 full stops, we're still interested.
Yeah, totally.
If you really want to get involved, there's a link where you can edit the file in GitHub as well. So depending on how deep you want to get into helping us improve the documentation, there's routes open to you.
Yeah, so that's great to hear. I think it's great if you can share your screen and walk us through this journey, like basically from the documentation main page, and then walk us through the platform and the Viridian and tutorials as well.
Certainly. Just sharing now. Can you see the screen now?
Yep.
Yeah. This is the homepage of the documentation that you will come from. As you can see, we have the search here, which will search through all of these documentations, and you can jump straight into common topics within the documentation from the links here. Management Center, libraries. At the bottom, we've got the documentation for connectors and plugins, access to the tutorials, and also the online training that's offered by Hazelcast. So if you like to learn self-paced in interactive tutorials, watch videos and things like that, it's another place where you can find out more about Hazelcast. In the platform documentation, go there first. You will see, as I was saying earlier, over here we have the edit this page. and the report an issue links. Please do make use of those. And the yes, no buttons, if it's helpful, yes is good. If it's not helpful and you click no, please do report an issue or suggest an update as well, because otherwise we have no context. What you'll find in the documentation is a navigation panel. It's fairly standard on this side. If there are headings within, you can link to them from this side. Any of these will take you to where you're going. If you want to find out more about Hazelcast, actually, you want to go down into the reference section currently, where all the architecture is there. There is a nice overview that takes you through the concepts that we deal with and all the different things that you can do with Hazelcast. The reference section is a very useful section. You'll also find frequently asked questions about issues that we know that people have, well, issues isn't the right word, but questions that people have had that we have answered that may well help get you to where you need to be. Again, on this one, you can search just within the current documentation from the search box at the top here. If you're watching it on a small, if you're looking at it on a smaller screen, there will be the hamburger menu, and you will find the search at the bottom of the hamburger menu. That will search the entire documentation, not just the platform documentation. From here, you can select the version of your software, either from the navigation panel, which gives you links to the different documentation that we have in the set and the available versions for each. Within, let's go back to the home page because I know that one works. Within each page, you'll also find a version selector at the top of the page. If there's no version selector, this is the only version of that page, but you can go back to the version you need quite quickly and simply just by selecting from the top of the page. In other documentation, we have the Management Center, which is used by both Platform and Viridian. It's a self-contained tooling that will help you manage and monitor your clusters. All of that documentation is also accessible. The Viridian documentation, which is the cloud product, if you don't want to have the infrastructure and manage it yourself, let us do it. And this takes you through what you need to know for this. All of the way it works is exactly the same. The search, the links to report an issue or make an update yourself. The command line tool has its own documentations. You'll notice that the structure is pretty much the same in all of these. There's a get started with a general introduction. There's a tutorial section. These are the tasks that you'll do when you're managing. The reference includes various types of reference documentation. The platform documentation has some of the concepts, but this will mostly be tables that show you your variables, your parameters, the metrics that you can find. Just dip in like any reference, really. And of course, the release notes that tell you what has happened in each of the releases, what's been added, what's been improved, what's been changed, and what we've fixed. Along the top here is another way to access the different documentation sets. These will all take you to the latest version of the documentation. You can access the tutorials, which you can do here for each separate documentation, or you can access it from the tutorials page, which takes you to another home page. You can filter by the product that you're interested in, the language that you want to use, and then follow the tutorials from here. Obviously, API references for everything. That's a standard API reference, and that's probably, if you're going to the documentation, the place you would go to most often once you're up and running with it. And then we've got other resources which take you through various trainings, the use cases that you can apply. If you click the Hazelcast, it will take you to the Hazelcast main website. The home button will take you back to where we started in the Hazelcast documentation home.
Yeah, that's great to hear. I think this is really nice, well-structured journey here, especially about how you can choose between the platform or the versioning cloud. And also the nice thing about tutorials, right? So when you clicked on tutorial, you don't only get the tutorial, but also you get the source code as well on GitHub, which make it really nice thing to have. So you can basically practice as you go along. Can you walk us through the actual writing documentation? So what is the process looks like?
Yes, writing the documentation. Obviously, it depends on whether we're making an update or a completely new topic. An update involves pulling down the files from GitHub, making the changes that are required. They could be requested from various places. It could be a new feature that we know of. It could be a JIRA that's been raised against us for a clarification. It could be something that's come in through the GitHub raising an issue that we saw earlier. All of these get put into our documentation JIRA board. We have a backlog that will keep us busy for some time, and obviously a new page is a whole new feature, a whole new section within the product itself. So there will be a blank page to start up with. We write in ASCII doc, which is not dissimilar to Markdown. It's a plain text language. It's easy to read. It's easy to code. We can just put it in. I use Visual Studio Code as my editor, but we could use any editor that is aware with a plugin for ASCII doc, and then we can preview it in the editor, much the same as coding. We can build the documentation locally and try it on our local server. Once we're happy with that, we'll then commit it to GitHub, raise a PR. Another author will review for language consistency, adherence to the style guidelines, and technical experts will review for completeness, clarity, and correctness. Once everyone's happy, as I say, once it's approved, we squash and merge, and there we have it.
That's great. And if we touched on it previously, like if a community member would like to contribute, so can you show us like how this looks like on GitHub, and so how to start from documentation and move to GitHub, please?
Yes, if you're in the documentation, as I say, you can click any of these, edit this page, brings up the GitHub source file. This is ASCII doc. As I say, it won't be unfamiliar. Headings, admonitions, paragraphs. These are the tabs, and all of this is explained in the contributing guide, which is in the same repo as the excuse me, as the documentation, and it takes you through everything that you need to do, getting it all set up locally, getting the documentation project, making your change, building and testing it, committing it to GitHub. It explains how the projects are organized. So this is your typical thing, the YAML file that tells Antora, which builds from the ASCII doc, what files to include, at what level. This is simply the file structure in which you will find the information that is, and the navdoc is basically the table of contents. All of that is explained here. Build your local site. Everything you need to know is here. You'll be familiar with npm, no doubt, so it'll be just like putting on a comfy pair of slippers. Some parts that we do in the docs that are not standard ASCII doc are tabbed blocks. So for example, if we're giving a YAML and an XML example of the same thing, that will be in tabs, so you can switch between them in position on the page. This explains how to create those tabs. Again, it's fairly easy to pick up. I mean, I picked it up quite easily, so it can't be hard. And following those instructions, you will be well on your way to editing your documentation that you've opened here. If I've got cut in the way, we've also got a style guide which will help you writing in a similar voice as we technical authors call it to the rest of the people contributing to the documentation. It explains a bit more about the tools. Again, it takes you through the tabs part. It tells you the language that we write in. We use US English. So there's some tips on what the basic differences are. Some general writing advice. What makes a good heading. How to do lists when writing numbers, which is a whole subject on its own, I have to say, but it's captured very well here. So there's nothing that is going to surprise you. How to set up the code. That will take you through everything that you need to know to finish contributing.
Yeah, that's great. I think this is really a nice tutorial and walk through our documentation. And to be honest, it's quite simple to actually follow this process. Essentially, it's just a matter of writing the documentation, following the guideline and the styling, and basically submitting a PR if it is a PR, or
Yep.
if you found any issue with our documentation. So this is really nice and useful.
Yes.
So
I would say
any
if you submit the PR, it will come to us and we will review it and make any suggestions on style or language terminology. And then once we're all happy that it addresses what your need was and meets our voice, it'll be squashed and merged the same as if we'd done the update.
Yeah, that's great to hear. So we would encourage anyone basically to contribute, whether they find any issue with our documentation or they wanted to submit PR as well. So just to conclude, any key takeaway messages you would like to mention, Rebecca, or best practices for Hazelcast documentation?
Best practices if you want to get involved, and I hope you do, because it can only be made better with your help and it can only improve your own experience. It's a little outlay from you, but I hope that you see the benefit. We certainly do, and it's appreciated. The guidance I would give is, if you're writing, make sure that you consider that your view may be a certain environment. If you're using a Macintosh, it may work differently in Linux or in Windows. So remember to consider the fact that your way of doing it may not be the only way of doing it. If you want, on the community Slack channel, you can tag me directly and I will come and talk you through anything that you need talked through, or you can talk to me if you don't feel comfortable contributing to the docs but you want something done. Just let me know and I will do the raising of the documentation and try and sort it out for you.
Yeah, I think this is a great to mention now, especially about the community Slack. So we give you basically a couple of options now to contribute for anyone listening or watching us now. So you can go straight to our documentation, click on edit or submit an issue, or you can join our community Slack where you can basically ask questions about our documentation or talk to Rebecca directly. We do have live streams on Twitch as well, so make sure to follow us on Twitch. With that being said, thanks so much, Rebecca, for your time today. It's been really great to talk to you. Hopefully, we meet in person at some point, but it's great to get this started with our documentation because it's a crucial part of our platform.
It is, yes, and thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Right. Have a good one, everyone.